Hello, everybody. Welcome to Coffee Chats. My name is Janice Sweck, and I'm actually a co-founder of Big Medium. And occasionally I get to do these interviews, and I chose to do this one because our artist today, Camille Woods, is an old friend of mine, and I'm very excited to talk with her. Real quick, Coffee Chats features leaders in the creative community sharing their personal and professional experiences to inspire others pursuing careers in art. So today, Camille Woods, our artist speaker, is a painter based in Austin, Texas. Through her paintings and her illustrative style, Camille hopes to bring representation to queer humans through the lens of small town Texas. So hi, Camille.
Hi, Anna.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's funny, both Camille and I are nervous, which is weird because we talk to each other all the time. So
yeah. I think it's just, there's always this like, as an artist, there's like this moment when you go from private to public and like you have to explain your thought process, or like all of a sudden you're just like, you know, what was this free moment of just creating becomes this more focused sort of, I guess, intellectual stuff, like pursuit. You're trying to figure out what it means, you know?
It all makes sense in our brains when we're in our studios by ourselves.
It's true. Or it's like, sometimes I even like check out, like I'm not even like aware of what I'm doing when I'm painting. And then like, I just have to step back from it and be like, what does this mean? Like, you know, like, why are they holding each other that way? I guess it's like, is that like, yeah, it's just interesting, the process of painting like that.
Oh, I want to talk about that. That's interesting. I hope people that have joined were able to see some of the slideshow of her work. In the very beginning, we're gonna show it again sort of halfway through, just so you can get a better idea. But you can always go to her website as well to see more. CamilleWoods.com. Is it .com? Yeah.
Camille Woods art, because there's a realtor in San Diego.
Oh no.
Named Camille Woods, and she already got
Camille
it.
Woods art. Got it.
Damn it.
Well, Camille, I know it's weird because I know you so well that it's hard for me to like ask questions that I already know the answers to in a way, but I would like you to tell the audience kind of your quick background, you know, where you grew up, if you know, when you first sort of started to notice that you enjoyed creating and, you know, could use art as an expression.
Yeah, let's see, I kind of grew up all over. I was born in Chicago, Illinois. Actually, it was like a little suburb outside of Chicago called Evanston. And we moved to Nashville when I was a baby, lived there for about 7 years, and then New Jersey for a couple of years, and then Virginia for a couple of years, and then Dallas.
Oh, wow.
And then I came to Austin, and I just never left Austin because I don't know. I didn't have like a drive to do, like I saw a lot of my friends like, you know, like making career moves at a really young age and like moving to New York and Seattle and all that. And I was a kid with like a bachelor's degree in English. Like I had
you went to college in Austin or?
Yeah, UT. And I got a bachelor's degree in English, which was like kind of useless, you know, in a lot of ways. But I guess, you know, it helped me become better, like, I guess, rhetoric and analyzing things. I guess that's like the one skill, I feel like.
Were you already making art at that point, or?
A little bit, definitely. It was much more of like a hobby thing. I mean, I started making art when I was a kid. I was always like, that was like my hobby, obviously, just like painting, drawing, crayons, like whatever. And I carried that with me. It was definitely like something that you could just do, like if you didn't feel well, like if I was sad or something, because I feel like everybody goes through like a depression phase in their like 20s, and I feel like I created a lot of art in my 20s, and I think it was like a coping mechanism for like my life at that time. And so it's always just been definitely like, you know, a constant thread in my life, like being an artist. It's like a part of who I am. It's how I approach. I'm a designer, like a visual designer by trade. That's what I do for work. And I feel like I bring that artistic point of view and that passion to my work there as well.
That was one of my questions, was how does your art come into your work, and how does your work come into your art? The work that you do, you're a graphic designer at a local company. Yeah, can you?
Yeah, I think like it's definitely like color is huge because, you know, I've always just like had like I guess a proclivity to color. Like I just feel like I've always just like understood like color relationships and so like that's always helped me in design through illustration, and probably is like bolstered that skill just because of the tools, and they show you like, you know, like analogous colors or like complementary colors, and so you start to like expand your view of how colors, you know, come together and color theory and all that. And so I think like it's definitely affected how I paint. And
The
sort of
color, the use of color in your work is incredible. I love it. And I don't want to use the word simple. I just can't think of a better one right now, but it's often just like 2 or 3 colors.
yeah.
But it's so rich and so dense with feeling. And I mean, it's amazing what you do with few colors.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Yeah, I feel like I tend to, as a human, wear my heart on my sleeve. And I feel like the work that I have been making, like I feel like there is a lot of vulnerability in my work, and I think it's like reflective of who I am as a human.
Yeah. I forgot to mention this. If anyone watching has any questions while Camille and I are talking, please feel free to put your question in the chat box in case it's, you know, relevant to what we're talking about in that moment. I'll try to get to questions, and if we miss you at the end, we'll do a little bit. We'll have a little more time for questions. So tell me about the body of work that you've been working on lately and where it started. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm really stoked about the work that I'm doing right now because it's like one of the things as an artist I think I've always struggled with, and why it's always just been a hobby for me, is that sort of trying to create. I actually had an artist friend, this older gentleman that my parents knew. He once saw some of my paintings, like when I was younger, some landscapes that I had done, and he was like, you know, the one thing that you're missing is like a larger concept. Like, what do you want to say with your art? Like, what is that larger concept? And like, it has to be big enough that it can span like 300 canvases. Like you need like, you know, and so it kind of became this almost like Sisyphean like pursuit throughout my whole life until now, because it's like you try something and then you're like, oh, it doesn't, like that falls short, or like maybe you're forcing it too much. And then like, you know, we were lucky enough to build a studio space in our backyard. And so I had plans to sort of like get more energized and get back into art. And the Ted Cruz tried to pass those bathroom laws for transgendered people. And I was really, really upset about that. And like, I just didn't really know how to process outside of like, you know, doing any kind of due diligence to call my senators and, you know, protest it. So I created a painting just as like a sketch sort of in protest of that for me personally. And then looking at that, all of a sudden I was just like, holy crap, like,
What was the painting? Oh, sorry.
Oh, it's fine. It was essentially, it was just like you couldn't see the person, like from like, you couldn't see their head or their face. You could see their hands, and they were both wearing like Western shirts. They both had their nails painted. One was drinking like a martini, one was drinking a beer, and then there was a male female bathroom in the background. And I was just like, sort of just trying to encapsulate like, it's kind of irrelevant, like who, you know what I mean? Like it just doesn't matter at all. I mean, that was just like a first one. And I've done others where just trying to like, you know, showing like a cowboy's, like from his legs down, or like you can see that his nails are painted, but like his boots are nearby, because I've, you know, often transgender, like females before they can transition will, you know, try to, you know, just express their femininity in ways, you know, and it's just really sad that Ted Cruz just demonized, you know, transgender people. And I just, you know, as a queer woman, you know, that's my problem. Like that's my community. And I think that I want to make art to protest it. You know, I want to make art to like represent queer people, you know, to humanize us, to show as real people, to show like love between queer people of all, you know, all races. And like, it doesn't, it's just like the Texas patriarchy too is like kind of like the pinnacle, you know, like the male, like white, like cowboy, like the marble man.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of wanted to just say like, F you, Ted Cruz, like here's some like super, you know, proud gay cowboys. So I kind of lean pretty hard on like creating white male cowboys. And then stepping back from that, I started to want to incorporate more diversity, which is kind of like another layer of just like that patriarchy, right? Like, just like, you know, it strengthens that message, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, that was one of my questions is why cowboys?
That's funny.
But that makes a lot of sense. I wish we'll be able to see some of the examples of your work, but what I find striking about them too is um, all the images are of couples, you know, either two men or two women who are one, the expressions on their face, you know, no one's smiling. There's very much a very sort of there's a sadness to it, and a secrecy to it, and melancholy, yeah. But they're all touching in some way, like whether it's under the table, they're holding hands, or one has a hand on a shoulder. I mean, they're really beautiful and powerful and sad. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, that's my personal experience coming through there, because I feel like, I mean, objectively, I can definitely see, you know, other queer couples experiencing like, you know, subjugation and not feeling safe to express, you know, affection towards each other. But that's very much like a very personal experience of just my wife and I going on, you know, day trips to small towns in Texas and just taking photographs and generally just trying to find like inspiration for paintings. And, you know, it's just kind of a fun thing to do for the afternoon. And we definitely don't feel safe, like showing any kind of affection. You know, you see, you know, Trump 2020, you see Ted Cruz signs. Like my wife Suzanne photographed this like huge billboard that this man had spent his own money to prop up on his land right along the highway that was just like anti-gay people, like anti-choice, anti-everything. It was just like total vitriol and hate, like like that energy was like reverberating, like
well, yeah, no one would feel safe, but yeah, especially
yeah, just, you know. And so I feel like maybe, you know, heterosexual, it's like, you don't have to think about like when you kiss your partner. It's like before I kiss Suzanne, sometimes I'll just like make a check, you know, just, you never know. There's always some like.
Well, and that's kind of what the paintings feel like. You know, they're hiding under a wisteria tree, or
Right.
I mean, there's a feeling of secrecy in each one of the pieces, which is just heartbreaking. But
yeah. It's also meant to like elicit also just like this powerful sense of like, there's a mutual understanding among queer people. I feel like that we suffer in this unique way. And I feel like when you are together in a safe space, when you can take a moment to linger by a loquat tree or sit under a wisteria that's like sort of like becomes like a safe haven, you know, like that one painting I did of these two men in like in a sorghum field. It's like, may they find sanctuary in the sorghum field. And it's like, that's like where
in nature. Yeah.
And so I kind of want to start exploring just like, what does it mean for like, what does it mean for queer people to have a safe place in Texas? Like, what does that safe space look like, right? Like when I go to a small town, like, you know, some of the paintings I explore show queer people, you know, in a Texas town setting wearing like very prominent queer pride, like scarves or gloves in that one series I did. And like, I feel like I want to explore like a different narrative where like queer people aren't hiding, but they're like out and they're everywhere and they're celebrating, and it's their love is celebrated just as much as, and our love is celebrated just as much as
any love.
You
Right.
know? Are you tearing up? I feel like
I mean, just yeah.
Yeah. but I'm lucky to have wonderful friends that support us. So we have a good community here.
Well, good. What do you think about doing with these pieces? Have you started to kind of approach different galleries? What's your, or that is my question, but also, you know, where are you going to go next with it?
I mean, I think I want to eventually have a show. I just think it's kind of neat to, I mean, for me, like I've never done anything like this in my entire life. Like I've never painted something so big. I've never dedicated so much time. I feel so like, um, I feel like I put such of my heart and soul into this body of work, and like it's so different from anything else, like work related. Like I feel like I create really good stuff at my work, but like ultimately my company owns that. Like
Right.
just like these hands, right, that like make it like, I mean, I'm more respected than that, but you know what
Right.
I mean?
Well, and I think, you know, yeah, I just, there is something, there are different ways that art can be made too. Like sometimes I'll make art that's just meant to expand my mind and kind of shake things off or whatever. And then once it's done, I never need to see it again. And then there's art that you make that you feel truly compelled to make that has like a lasting effect on your psyche and heals you at the same time and makes you cry all night long.
Yes. No, healing is a big word, because like I have a lot of, you know, this is getting very personal, but I'm actually like, I wear my heart on my sleeve, so whatever. You know, I have a lot of internalized shame, I think, being queer, and I'm working through it. I'm like finding my pride. I'm finding like my pride through these paintings. Like I, you know, wasn't accepted when I came out, and it was such a struggle for me, my coming out story. And, you know, for the first time, we bought like a queer flag, like a queer pride flag, like the newest one with like all the different additional colors and like, you know, seeing that like just fly in my window when I'm in the house, like sitting on the couch, like that to me is like, okay, like I should be proud. Like I'm like I'm beautiful. Every part of me is beautiful, right? That included, and should be a proud Jewish queer white woman.
Well, I remember when you and Suzanne got married in Austin, and you
Yeah.
were on the cover of, what was it, The Guardian or something like that?
No, not The Guardian. That would have been crazy. It was like, it was the Texas. It was the UT whatever their local newspaper is for like
Okay.
University of Texas.
But it was a picture of you and Suzanne having just,
We just
I
got
was
married.
it's been incredible to watch, to know you for the last
Thanks. I appreciate it.
15 years.
Likewise. I'm also really like
um,
you introduced me and my wife, so.
I know I was thinking I should mention that to everybody. Camille and I used to actually work together long ago. And before we became good friends, I would tell my best friend Suzanne about this woman at work that I thought she should date. And that's how I got to know you.
I'd be like, Jana, I'm dating somebody right now.
I know you both had, I know. I was going to leave that part out.
Yeah. Yeah.
One thing, how do you, so before you were doing these series though, you had done, I mean, you've made paintings your whole life, like you said, but you always were working sort of smaller and more portable, you know, just like most people, like paintings you can do at your table or whatever. So how has working large changed the way that you even experience your own art, or even how other people experience it that you've noticed?
Yeah, I mean, those are great questions. I think for me personally, like I feel such big emotions about the work that I'm creating. Like I sometimes feel like I'm vibrating when I'm painting them. And like, I don't know, there's just like this power and like, it's like almost like it's just the statement becomes that much more powerful, right? And it's like really this immersive experience, because when you walk up to these characters, they're like either your height or they're taller than you, right? And it's like I think it really sort of allows you to resonate in that sort of emotion that comes out of it, right? Like that you said, that you mentioned that you feel when you see them. I think I've heard that a couple of times just from a couple of people that have come through West, you know.
That's what I mean, I feel like, I mean, just the large scale, you just said it, like when you stand in front of it, you can't help but feel like you are stumbling onto a scene that maybe you aren't supposed to, and then you get all these feelings of, well, it feels secret, and it feels like am I under the wisteria as well, and is this, you know, this is a forbidden love, and it's beautiful, and you know, and so it's very I think that's what I love about big work and working big is you're right, you
Yeah.
tend to feel like you are completely part of the scene, or you're able to easily step into it and feel like you're part of it.
Yeah, it's like if they suddenly just like turn towards you and we're like, what are you doing
What?
here?
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's been, I feel really lucky though to be able to paint this big. And I just get like a canvas roll that I just like hang. I haven't quite figured out how to stretch the canvas. That's like
Uh-huh.
they're big because they're big paintings. They're like 5 feet by 6 feet. So
You're saying that most of them aren't currently stretched, they're
yeah, they're just, I cut them and then roll them up and put them in the closet because I'm just like, what am I going to do with this? Like we have two in our house and like our house is way too small for them, but it's like whatever.
That's cool. They're like tapestries.
Yeah, or like wallpaper.
Mm. Um, one at the one of the things I was reading about your pieces that you've been doing, the imagery that you get for them. Will you tell everyone sort of how you come across the because you use photographs, old photographs?
Yeah, I definitely look at old photographs mostly just to sort of get like a composition. Like I'm looking for like how people are holding each other and like just sort of figuring out how to do a sketch. I often look at photographs and I ended up stumbling upon like if you type in like in Google like historical like queer couples, like there is just it's so insane. Like there's so many photographs and I found this guy this Italian guy who actually compiled a bunch of these photographs, like just like photographs that you would find in like, I don't know, like an antique shop, right? Like sometimes you see like old photographs of like families that you know, you don't know, it's just like a stack of them, whatever. So he compiled all these ones of like all these queer couples and put them into a book and it's called, I think it's called, I don't know if it's called Men in Love. I forget what it's called, but anyway, one of the things he said in the forward was like, it's just so interesting how, you know, my whole perspective on you know, what I thought life was like for queer people historically has always been so like negative, right? But then here are these images that have been captured by either family or their like local community. So like somehow, even though being homosexual wasn't accepted back in the day, they were able to essentially create a safe place, where,
Mm-hmm.
like their community or their family were like, they were maybe accepted more so in just like this and those moments were captured, you know, and so it is beautiful, this idea of just like the community that comes out of I'm totally going on a tangent, but yes, I use like photographs.
Well, so I mean, so the characters in your paintings, are they actual people in history or?
No, not necessarily. Only one of them. Sorry, I was looking left because I have a big one over there. I did one on a historical couple. It's this blue painting for this Roy G. Biv series that I did. I did a series. I'm still finishing it, but it's a series on the colors of the rainbow. So each painting is one color of the rainbow. And blue was actually a writer, this woman called Radcliffe Hall from England. In like the 30s, she wrote a book about a female protagonist. So she's born as a woman, but she doesn't feel that she's a woman,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of like her struggle with her gender and her sort of the gender roles and her gender identity. And it was really powerful because I read a lot as a kid. My dad would give me a lot of like books, and unfortunately very Eurocentric books, which I've since expanded. But this, if he had just tossed this one in, you know, with all the other ones, I think I would have had so many revelations. I would have like,
Yeah.
I just
Well, that's
would have,
kind of, sorry.
yeah. No, that's all.
Well, I mean, so do you think, I mean, I'm sure you do think about this with the paintings that you make now. I mean, you say that part of why you're compelled to make them is to just have more, you know, queer people put out in, I mean, where there's more artwork made depicting, you know, people that you wish that you had been exposed to more in. So what's my question? I guess my question is, do you feel like that's kind of what you're doing too? What you just said, that you wish that you had gotten this book, and how much of a difference it would have made in your life, that you're kind of trying to do the same thing for someone else?
Yeah, I don't know if it started out that way, but I think it's like evolving into that too, just because I remember talking to this like 12-year-old kid who like came through our West studio, and he was looking at one of the paintings, and he was just like, this is so cool. Like I'm not gay, but my friend is gay. And I was like, oh my God, you're 12 and you're saying that, that's awesome. Like I would never have said that at 12. But then he was like, it would be so, my friends would love this. They would love to see this. And like, I mean, it's kind of like, you know, like Kehinde Wiley, you know, it's like what he did for Black people. Like he painted Black people in these, you know, traditionally European painting settings. And it's like, you know, the first time that Black people were portrayed in this, you know, more empowered position. Like his art is so empowering for Black people. You know, I think you can say the same for queer people, is like, we are not represented. And, you know, society still has a lot of shame around it. I think they carry a lot of shame around it, and they push that on the queer community. And I just want it to be, you know, like not that exotic. Like it's like, we're not aliens, we're humans, you know?
Yep, yep. Have you come in contact with a lot of queer artists in Austin, or maybe outside of Austin, while you've been making this work, or are there people that have inspired you with their work?
I mean, not specifically. I feel like I'm kind of terrible at networking. That's like always been my downfall. And I know you need to network in order to be an artist, because you have to like network with galleries and stuff. But I figure I'll get more involved. I mean, I kind of feel like I'm just now also getting to a point where I have some critical mass, like as far as art, you know, or like maybe, you know, in the next year or so, I might have enough work for a show, you know, where it's like still like I've been working really hard for the past 2 years. I feel like, to sort of mostly just because I can't help myself. Like I feel like my brain's just exploding with ideas. So like,
Right.
so
Has it
yeah.
been exploding even more with ideas during the stay at home during
Yeah, I would say
this
so. I
year?
mean, I definitely had a lull. I think like, you know, life is really strange right now and very stressful. And sometimes you just need to like sit in front of the TV and like watch something stupid. But then other times, like I do find that if I go into the studio, I can usually, you know, I become so focused when I'm painting. It's such like a Zen process. So if I can just overcome sort of my anxiety and like just walk into the studio and start painting, I find that I actually feel better afterwards.
Yeah.
If I just paint for like an hour, you know.
Why do you think that is? What do you think it is about just painting for an hour when there's so much going on and it doesn't touch anything, any of those problems, but like, why is it that it's so therapeutic?
I think it's just meditation. I think it's very tactile, right? And like usually I'm listening to music. It's like I'm stoked about what I'm painting. Yeah, you're just very focused. So it's just like I kind of forget the world. You know, it's like sometimes like 4 hours will pass and I'll be like, oh my God, like I'm hungry. I should probably go inside and eat. And then I have like paint all over my face and in my hair.
You're like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing work. Oh,
yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's just like, yeah, it's been up and down. I feel like I'm on like I'm on a period of making more work right now.
You have many ideas that you have yet to paint? Is that what?
Yes. Yeah, I've done a bunch of sketches and just like, I'm thinking of maybe just starting like multiple canvases. I've never done that before, really. Like multiple canvases, having them like interchangeable, just be able to like pick one up, put it down, pick another one up, paint it. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Try it all.
I know. We have nothing but time, you know?
True. Everyone should be making art. Yeah.
I feel like it's been therapeutic for sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you was about your process. Like when you start, you said that you do a lot of sketches to kind of figure out the layout, and do you tend to have a very clear idea of what you're going to paint before you paint it? Is the painting sort of the last final step, and it just sort of unfolds, or do you have to go over it a lot? Do you make a lot of decisions while you're working?
I think it's a bit of both. Like I feel like I definitely sketch first. And sometimes I'll do these little painting sketches. And I think that's kind of where like the minimal color comes from too, is like when you're sketching, it's sometimes easier. Like I'll take like a blue pen, a red pen, and like a black pen and just like limit a drawing to that. Um, and then the same goes for just like, you know, I don't know, I guess it just like, it is a little simpler to pick simpler colors, but I definitely start drawing first, and then sometimes I do a sketch, and other times I'll just do like a really quick sketch, and then I'll just start painting. Like I'm like one of those people, I'm really impatient. So like for me, I want to get in there and I want to do it, you know,
Well,
like,
you probably would do well then with multiple canvases going at once, because I feel like that's one of the main reasons if you tend to not want to wait for the paint to dry, or maybe you have several different ideas that you can't do on one. Yeah, I
yeah,
think
I've had to slow myself down to figure out, because I'm like a, you know, self-taught artist. So I'm just like figuring out as I go. And I find that my process is getting better and better. Um, and I find that if you do like start with the dark layers, and then you start with the medium layers, and then if you start sort of like building the layers, like it actually is a lot more efficient. Because I used to just have all the colors on like a palette, and I would just sort of,
right.
so you get this sort of like more wishy-washy, less discrete color tones. And so I want to, I'm trying to improve the like the color tonality, like the progression from light to
I
dark.
Yeah, and the layers too. I found just because I all work in a similar way, and I can see it working with your pieces. Like when you're doing a scene of sorts, when you're building, you know, a landscape and then a tree and then like there's something, I don't know if you experience the same thing, but there's something really gratifying about feeling like you are actually building a three-dimensional, I mean, I know it's not three-dimensional, but you aren't just keeping it two-dimensional by painting, you know, the jacket is going to remain white and it goes next to the black background. But if you build it from the background and then add the mountains and then add the trees and then add the person, you feel like you're actually creating a real, you know, a narrative. It's a powerful way to paint. Um,
Yeah, it is. It's true. It also feels like sculpting in a way too,
yes, yes.
you know, and I've noticed that like my shadows have gotten a lot more dramatic.
I think we've started to show some of Camille's work, and this might be my favorite piece.
My latest one.
Yeah, I love it. I don't know if you want to talk about any of the pieces, but I mean, I guess we've been talking about them.
Yeah,
Um,
this is just part of that Roy G. Biv series. So this is Indigo. And again, I'm just with this series, each painting is a couple in an embrace. It's meant to be passionate and melancholy, because I feel like that's what, you know, sort of that's what love is like for queer people in Texas. You know, it's not necessarily always safe.
there's a question from an audience member. Jenny Clark is asking, where do you draw inspiration from for your bold, distinct color palette?
That's funny. Yeah, I definitely like, I definitely think like the starting with like Roy G. Biv was like super helpful, because like, you know, it's like that's a color palette right there. And I knew that there was just certain tones of red, and there are certain tones I didn't want essentially.
Huh.
And
How
so
come? Certain
there
feelings?
were two like sort of like too primary, you know what I mean? Like I definitely wanted the color to be unique. I like to mix my own colors. And so there is like a nuance. And the thing about acrylic is if you don't mix enough, you have to like remember your formula. And like I do, because it's like 3 or 4 colors that you're combining, but there's always like, it's always off like a tiny bit. Like you can never
Hmm.
mix mix the same color exactly how you mixed it initially. And so there is
Right.
this, I feel like I like that. There is this like, almost like wabi-sabi. It's like this imperfect perfect, right? Like there's it adds to like the sort of the nuance of color.
Sure. The life is never the same twice.
Right. Totally. And yeah, I don't know. I guess since doing the Roy G. Biv series, I'm like, I'm just gonna keep going with this color stuff because I don't know, I just really enjoy it.
It's so, yeah.
It's fun and it's distinct. I think I also draw inspiration probably just from being a designer, like having been a part of having to create illustrations and crazy gradients and all kinds of weird stuff depending on the trend of the moment.
Well, what's
And
interesting, I had used the word earlier, now I regret it, that they're simple, the colors that you're using, but really I think it'd be harder to create a lot of depth and value using just one or two colors. So I think it's
well, thanks,
maybe
Jana.
harder what you're doing. Well, and
Yeah,
what I find interesting about them too is they feel black and white. I mean, where you're adding color to like a black and white photo. So there's something, where it is ageless and or could have been taken 100 years ago or.
yeah. And maybe that sort of solidifies the fact that I tend to look at older photographs of people. I think like looking at this painting right now, like that's the one of Radcliffe Hall and her partner. So Radcliffe Hall was the writer that wrote a book about a sort of non-binary protagonist, and in real life, she and her partner were able to actually live together out, and I think it's because they were wealthy.
And what
But
was the date that she was around? She was alive?
like 40s, 30s or 40s.
Okay.
Yeah, that's like a big range, but I'm terrible at remembering specifics, so you'll have to look it up.
Well, so the town you grew up in I guess, did you leave by the time you were 7, did you say, in Chicago? I was going to say, were you in sort of a small town? Is your interest in small town Texas have anything to do with growing up in a smaller town or not really? Is it more this?
No, we grew up in cities. I
Oh,
feel like,
okay.
yeah, we were mostly in cities. I think my obsession with small towns is like, it's like I have this love-hate relationship with Texas. Like I love Texas, like in some ways. Like when you drive into these small towns, they're so epic. Like the architecture is so beautiful. Like the
Mm.
shadows are insane because the Texas sun is insane. And like, you really can like feel this like repression. Like there's just this like unspoken, I don't know, it just doesn't feel safe, but it's also
Mhm.
like so beautiful. So it's like this, I don't know, it's just like this interesting contrast. And so I've always just kind of been obsessed with Texas towns, and I've always taken day trips on the weekends just to get out and photograph and I don't know,
Yeah.
see stuff.
What compelled you to start using fabrics and clothing in your work? Because I noticed some of the pieces have like an actual, pants that you've adhered to the canvas.
Yeah, I guess like when I was younger, I used to do a little bit of mixed media in my hobbies. I mean, at the very least, I would like rip up paper. Like if I made a mistake, I would like cut out another piece of paper and like glue it on to where I made the mistake and then like repaint over it. And so it became like an aspect of the painting,
Uh-huh.
which I liked. And so I did those as a hobby. And then we were in a small town and we walked into an antique store and I saw some Wrangler shirts and I was just like, whoa. It was just like one of those confluence of thought and being in this place, and suddenly this idea hit me that that could be fun, and it was. That I had no idea how it was going to turn out.
Yeah, how
And
did it feel? I mean, like, how did it differ from your other pieces in terms of how you took it in?
I mean, I felt like a 5-year-old. I was like, it was like on the ground.
Mm.
I'm like a messy painter. Like
Yeah.
I have this like frantic energy that comes over me when I'm creating. And you just like can't stop me kind of. And I just remember having glue like all over my hands, and I'm just like, I took a brush. I mean, it just was messy. And then I just started painting. I mean, I just like dove straight in. It didn't take me very long to make it. I just sort of like made some quick decisions, was like, I'm just going to do this. And if it doesn't work out, like whatever. I'm trying to learn to like let go. Not everything has to be a masterpiece.
No, well, even when you said when you were a kid you would mess something up and put a piece of paper, glue a piece of paper over it, I was about to say you sort of, I feel like that's a huge lesson in art, is just to recognize that it's never going to be exactly what you might have envisioned in your head. The goal is to continually keep working on it, keep going on
Yeah.
it. That there's it, whether that means pasting something over it, or going with a mistake you made, or that surprise, that ability to change, and quick thinking. I don't know. I guess I feel like artists are good at that. At
Yeah, it's true,
problem
because we have
solving.
to like, yeah, because you're just like, you're solutioning in a
Yeah.
sense, right?
Well, or we're messing it up constantly, and so we just always have to be. I'm
Yeah.
just kidding.
Or there's that. Yeah. No, there's this really great book a friend gave me for my birthday one year. It was Agnes Martin. She's like an artist. She does textiles. I think it was during the Bauhaus time. But anyway, she has some writings on just like, she just muses on like what it means to be an artist. And it's really helped me, because she talks a lot about just like how failing is like a necessary process, and like failing actually like increases creativity, right? Because your mind starts like sort of triangulating like, how else can I do this, And so,
Well, and maybe that's even part of, as you become an older artist, after you've been, or I should say, an experienced artist.
are you calling me
Um,
old?
I know I changed my word. um, what was I going to say? That you, no, shoot, lost my train of thought. Yeah, just that problem solving is all part of it.
But you said as you become a more experienced artist,
I know I forgot where I was going to go with that. You were talking about Agnes Martin.
maybe you become more adapted to that. Like when you're
Oh,
younger.
that's what I was going to say. I was going to say that in constantly sort of failing or whatever, and trying to sort of solve the puzzle or whatever, so the more you do that as you grow as an artist, maybe that's where you at some point become more comfortable really being vulnerable in your art. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, and maybe that's why a lot of artists, it isn't until sort of later in their career that they are now finally making work that they feel really compelled to make and really close to. But vulnerability is such a huge part of it.
I agree, because I think that this work, I would not be making as much work as I'm making if it wasn't like this personal, like this is my story too.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember when I first showed work, I had some friends come by and they meant well, but like there were a couple comments like, oh, like Brokeback Mountain. And I'm like, ha ha ha, that's funny. But those are actually like real people. And like one of them died, like
Mm-hmm.
because of who he loved. And, like that's actually like a really harrowing story. And like, could have been me, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Or my wife, or, like, luckily we haven't encountered like a lot of uh, sort of persecution for being gay, but we've had a few encounters, and it's just,
Yeah.
anyway, this is very, like, my heart is very much in this. It's very much,
Oh, it is beautiful work.
I really appreciate that, Jana, coming from you, since you are also an astounding artist.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Like we talked about you.
Oh. I'm just, yeah, I could get lost. So this piece we're looking at right now is like 5 feet by 6 feet or so.
No, this one's actually a little bit smaller. This one's, I don't know what, 36 by 48, so 3 feet by 4 feet. So it's a little bit
Hmm.
smaller. Yeah, I just decided that, I don't know, I was really hesitant to do a landscape because I had done so many as a kid. Like I was doing these landscapes with like really tiny people and like these dramatic shadows. And I was really, really influenced as a kid by like surrealism. I just loved how intellectual it was. I loved how dramatic it was and how weird, and it just kind of like have been inspired by the shadows of surrealism, I feel like. And I just thought I would try painting another landscape, and rather than making it so much about the landscape, making it more about these women that are these to me are three queer women that are traveling together, and you know, together there's strength. You know, queer people, like in unsafe places, we have to create our own community, you know, and I just sort of want to start painting more of this, more of like I said before earlier in this conversation, like what does it mean for there to be a safe place for queer people in Texas, in the places that I have visited, you know, like really small towns, like Iran, Texas. There's this tiny town outside of Marfa that we drove through, or on the way to Marfa, and I'm just like, I would never live here. And I'm like, but what would it look like if I did? And like, what would it look like if like queer people were just here and it was okay and it wasn't, you know, nefarious, because it's not, you know.
Do you, your wife is an artist as well. Do you guys ever collaborate or think about collaborating, or is it more just bouncing ideas regularly off each other?
We definitely bounce a lot of ideas regularly off of each other. Occasionally we collaborate. I think we have some future plans to like do some stuff together. But generally it's our own very solitary pursuit, because her work is also very personal to her. You know, like Suzanne also is very vulnerable in her work. And it's definitely inspired me, right? Because one of the things that I think for a long time being an artist, you know, I almost didn't trust myself. Like I didn't trust myself and my style. And for a long time I was like, why can't I paint like that person? And like try and paint like a realist artist, or I would try and paint in these ways, and I would get really frustrated because that's just like not what's coming out of me. And for some reason I just wasn't accepting what was coming out of me. And like, I think in these last 2 years, I just have a lot of quiet confidence. It's like this work and is 100% me. Like it's not like, it just feels very personal to me, and it feels like my own style, and like I'm embracing that style, and kind of like fuck everybody else who doesn't like it. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because you also, as the viewer, you don't feel like it's, you know, not a tangible, like, I don't feel like I can't connect with your piece. It's not obvious that it's just what you're going, you know, that it's so personal to maybe your own narrative and your own story.
Right.
So, I mean, that's where it's also so successful, is that it leaves, it doesn't, well, it leaves some interpretation to the viewer, but it's also, it doesn't exclude anyone, I guess is what I want to say.
Yeah, that's a great thing to say. I feel like that is also my intention. And I just want to keep pushing that envelope where, like, you know, people that come, like any kind of person that comes up to a painting like this would feel some kind of synergy to it, you know, whether it's a personal synergy or like because they know somebody, like that kid his best friend is gay, and like, you know, so yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about? Any future plans, and or I don't know. Want
Yeah.
to talk about our brunch next weekend? Well,
Next weekend. Are you having brunch next weekend?
brunch next weekend.
Yeah.
Well, go on.
I was just gonna say, I think for me next, you know, coming up is just to just keep making work. I mean, that's just my only goal is just to keep making work, and if something comes of it, then it does. And I have to figure out what that path looks like. I have no idea like how to reach out to a gallery or
Nice.
you know.
You're doing the good work. That's the least important part. I mean, getting it in front of people is important. I haven't quite figured that out. I mean, I know I've talked to a lot of people, I get a lot of advice, but yeah, I mean, a lot of it is also just that courage. It's a completely different kind of courage.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're sort of at the end of our interview. I wanted to see, I know. I wanted to see if there was anyone that had any other questions. We can put it in the chat, or I think we can open it up and actually see people if they would like to ask anything directly.
It's okay if you don't have questions.
It's
not a big deal. I never ask
Oh,
questions.
there is a question. Hold on one second. Um, this says, I can tell that you certainly don't want to cheapen the often dangerous experience of being out and queer in Texas, but the idea of forbidden love is also often portrayed as daring or tantalizing. Holding hands under a table, hugging in a cornfield can also feel exhilarating. Can you speak to that a bit? How do you think about fantasy in your work?
Yeah, for sure. Like, um, yeah, there's definitely this juxtaposition in my painting, right? This idea of like forbidden love, because it is, you know, it is really passionate. And I know that like, it's kind of like from my personal experience, like if I'm with Suzanne and we happen to be in a small town and we don't necessarily feel safe, but like there's a romantic moment and like there's like a, you know, an old tree with a beautiful shadow that I want to like, you know, embrace her under, like, you know, we'll find like a small way to like touch each other, or to like to kiss. And like, there is a little bit of an electric charge that happens, I feel like more so just because there is this like sort of forbidden love. And so it's like, for me, there's a pink painting, it's called Meet Me in the Fig Room. And that one's definitely an example of like that sort of fantasy, you know, these people are essentially like, you know, risking their lives, you know, to have these relationships. And maybe not like in the sense of like that they will be killed, but in the sense that their community will like really reject them if it's out in the open. And so it's like the moments that you have together alone are really, really passionate. And, you know, it's like the latest one I did, it's called Devoted We Pine Under the Wisteria Vine. And it's like, you know, it's almost like I pine for the same free love that I see straight people have, right? I don't necessarily have that. And you know, maybe I can have that. I personally just don't necessarily feel safe yet. And like, you know, I think part of that is also just my own internalized shame from how I grew up, and sort of embracing that. But, you know, it is brave. It is brave to be gay in intolerant places, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the secret touching and stuff like that is meant to, I was trying to see if I answered all of his questions.
Yeah, how do you think? Yeah, no, I think you did. My mom has a question.
Use of
Use of technology. I think she's asking if you use technology much for your pieces, maybe, or do you keep that pretty separate?
I think the only technology I use is when I'm Googling imagery, but generally, I'll print something. I've been trying not to print as much. I'll print on like a scrap or something if there's a drawing that I need to reference. Like, I mean, if there's a picture that I want to reference, like I want to take it into the house or something to draw. But I definitely paint from a drawing. Right? So I do a sketch. And I think that's why all the characters kind of look the same, because I'm not really painting real people, like their real faces. Like I'm just using their body, their posture, and their like how they're holding each other. Or
faces are less important.
Or yeah, their faces are less important. I feel like the faces I paint are really important though, because I feel like, I don't know, they're like characters in my head. They become like just these characters in my head. I was looking.
Do you, maybe this is a weird question, but do you ever sort of become attached to the character themselves to where you almost feel like you have relationships with them?
I think like
yeah.
If I ever do sell any of these paintings, I feel like I'm gonna cry. I feel like I'll tear up, just because, you know, some of them have taken me like months to finish. And then they do feel like real people. Like I walk in and they're looking right at me. Like,
Well,
you know,
that's the thing. Like I almost, well, and that maybe maybe it's different with how long it takes you, but it seems to me like how long it takes you is more about, yeah, the attachment the time you spend with this character. I've always found that really strange when you get sort of oddly emotionally attached to characters in your work.
Yeah.
But it's real. Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost
Especially
like,
with what you're talking about. I mean, of course you do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard not to, because I also just feel my emotions sort of imbued within these characters. So it's like they're all it's like I had a bunch of babies.
Hmm. Yeah, little
So
Marlboro Men versions of you.
I feel connected to them. Yeah, I once had an artist actually tell me that Stella Alisi, she said when she saw my work, she said that they look like me. I thought
Oh,
that,
really? Oh, interesting.
it's kind of like when a writer first starts writing, they often write like autobiographical stuff just without even really trying
Oh,
sometimes.
yeah.
Because that's like your fodder, right? That's what you have to use.
No, whenever I draw from my head, whenever I draw people, they often have red hair. I mean, wild, and I can't escape it.
I love it. Don't
Yeah.
ever. Be you. That's the one thing I'm learning. Just be you, man.
Yep.
Be
Yep.
you. Own your own voice and the way that you paint. These are like strong lessons I feel like I've learned
Yeah.
through painting in the past 2 years.
That's awesome. That's
Thanks
a
so much, Jana.
Yeah, that's a great place to wind down. Thank you
Yeah.
everybody for coming. That was a really easy, lovely interview. Because I mean
Yeah.
your work is beautiful and so poignant right now too.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Jana. That means a lot. Thanks
All right.
everybody for
Yeah.
coming.
Are there any other questions before we all depart? I think everyone loves it in the chat. People are saying how much they love it.
Oh, thanks.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for attending this coffee chat, and thank you, Camille.
Yeah.
And
I'll
yeah,
see you later.
see you later.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.